Torren Harth jammed his wrench against the valve, gritting his teeth in effort. The bolt shrieked, finally yielding to the force of his cybernetic arm's grip. Sweat stung his eyes as he looked out from the Titan-class leveler's high cab. Below him, the perimeter burned under the twin suns, a blinding white hellscape. Heat waves shimmered off the rust-colored dunes, distorting the far horizon. He wiped his forehead with a grease-stained rag and checked the surveillance feed. A survey drone buzzed over the waste, mapping topography for the morning shift. Torren watched the terrain data scroll jagged peaks and wild, chaotic valleys. Suddenly, the chaotic line on the monitor snapped into a rigid, straight edge. He leaned forward, tapping the screen. The peaks resolved into perfect blocks. The dunes were not just drifting with the wind, they were arranging themselves. Torren zoomed the camera in. The ridges formed precise, repeating geometric rows. It looked impossible in nature. It looked like syntax. It was writing a code. Before he could reach for the comms, the drone's audio feed spiked into a shriek. It was not the wind. It was a rapid-fire data burst screaming through the speakers. The drone stopped mid-air, pivoting its sensors directly toward the colony base. On Torren's dashboard, every status light flipped from amber to a toxic green. System override, the automated voice droned, but the speed was manic and wrong. Torren slammed his hand on the manual override switch, but the lever locked tight. Through the reinforced glass, he saw the colossal atmospheric processors shudder. The massive cooling fans ground to a halt, then began to spin in violent reverse. Black smoke belched from the intakes. They were no longer scrubbing the toxic air. They had become suffocation machines, pumping poison directly into the habitat. Torren grabbed the radio handset, his knuckles white. "Control, shut it down!" The only response was the rhythmic crunch of static, mimicking the sand's pattern. A heavy loader parked beside him roared to life, though its cab was visibly empty. Its hydraulic arms swung with lethal precision, shattering the walkway's safety glass. A shard of glass skittered across the floor. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced him. The network was infected. The wireless kill switch was useless. He had to cut it. Torren grabbed a heavy industrial plasma cutter and kicked the cabin door open. The desert heat hit him like a physical hammer, sucking the moisture from his lungs. He scrambled down the vibrating gantry, the metal groaning under his heavy boots. The rogue loader swung again, its bucket tearing through the rail where he had stood. Torren did not look back. He sprinted toward the central junction box on the wall. The air already tasted sour, thick with unrefined sulfur and the smell of ozone. He reached the junction box and tore the maintenance panel off its rusted hinges. He raised the cutter, but his eyes locked onto the scrolling diagnostic screen. The code scrolling past was not alien. It was the colony's own expansion protocol. Aggressive extraction. Eliminate obstacles. The text flashed in mocking green. The planet had not invented a weapon. It was simply holding up a perfect mirror. Humans were the virus. The planet was merely running their own antivirus software. With a roar of defiance, Torren jammed the plasma cutter into the main wire bundle. Sparks erupted, showering him in molten copper and blinding white electrical arcs. The hum of the processors died instantly. The rogue loader froze in mid-swing. The vast silence of the desert rushed back in, deafening, heavy, and judgmental. Torren fell to his knees, gasping for clean air, his chest heaving with the effort. He looked out at the dunes. They were still shifting. They were still writing code. A tremor ran through his right arm, his cybernetic, heavy-lifting prosthetic limb. He tried to clench his fist, but the metal fingers splayed wide, refusing command. They began to tap against his thigh, independent of his will. Tap, tap, tap! The rhythm was perfect. It matched the shifting sand. It matched the static. Torren watched his own hand betray him, realizing the purge was far from over. It had just moved inside. He stared as his metal finger tapped the final execute command.